It all started on an ordinary morning in our quiet suburban neighborhood until everything suddenly felt anything but ordinary. The kind of calm that makes you forget the tension lurking just beneath the surface. I never imagined that a simple issue over parking in our own driveway would spiral into something I couldn't even dream of. But that's exactly what happened when the HOA Karen decided to take matters into her own hands, threatening to call the cops on my wife. What she didn't know, though, would change everything. You see, my wife isn't just anyone, she's the FBI director. And that fact? It turns the whole story on its head. We'd always kept to ourselves, careful not to ruffle any feathers in our neighborhood. Our driveway was just that, ours. So why was Karen so obsessed with parking? At first, it seemed like typical HOA drama. You know the type, the kind of person who thrives on control and loves playing the role of enforcer. She had a knack for turning the smallest things into big battles, but this time she went too far. What followed was more than just a confrontation, it was a clash between ordinary life and an extraordinary secret. The tension between my wife and Karen built up quickly. It wasn't just about parking, it was about respect, boundaries, and the dangerous assumption that she could intimidate us. Karen didn't realize she was messing with someone who walks in the shadows of national security. Every word she said, every threat she made only dug a deeper hole for herself. But how far would she go? And what would happen when she finally discovered who my wife really is? As the situation escalated, neighbors began to watch with growing curiosity. Whispers floated down the street. Was this really about a parking spot, or was something much bigger at stake? The line between routine neighborhood squabble and something far more intense blurred fast. I found myself caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace, while wondering how far Karen's stubbornness would push us. Would she back down? Or would this end with consequences she never imagined? What happened next changed everything. The calm facade of our neighborhood cracked wide open, revealing a secret Karen could never have prepared for. But I can't tell you what happened just yet, because that part of the story still needs to be told. The morning after that confrontation, the neighborhood felt different. Like the air itself was charged with an invisible electricity. The usual sounds of birds and children playing seemed muted, replaced by a low hum of tension. Karen's harsh words echoed in my mind, her smug certainty that she could push us around. But she didn't know the full story, the one that shaped my wife and made her who she is today. Before she became the FBI director, my wife went through years of sacrifice and hard work that most people never see. She started as a rookie agent, full of determination but underestimated by almost everyone around her. It was a tough road, long nights, dangerous missions, and moments when giving up seemed like the easier choice. But she kept going because she believed in justice, in protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. That same fierce dedication is what makes her so unshakable even when faced with someone like Karen. Our life together has always been a balancing act. On one side, there's the high-stakes world of national security she operates in, filled with secrets and threats most people can't imagine. On the other, there's our quiet home life, the simple things like parking a car in our own driveway, grocery shopping, or laughing over dinner. But Karen's behavior threatened to rip that balance apart. To her, it was just about enforcing HOA rules, but for us, it was a test of how far someone could go when blinded by arrogance and power. I watched as Karen continued to patrol the neighborhood, her eyes always searching for a reason to cause trouble. Every glance felt like a challenge, a silent dare to see how much she could push before something snapped. The neighbors, who once smiled politely, started whispering behind closed doors. Some were curious, others wary, sensing that this wasn't just petty HOA drama anymore. For my wife, this wasn't just about the parking spot or Karen's threats. It was personal, an invasion of the sanctuary we built after years of fighting battles far beyond our street. She carries the weight of countless lives on her shoulders, yet here she was, having to defend something as basic as our driveway from a woman who thought rules were above respect and humanity. As the days passed, the tension only grew. Karen's boldness was matched by our quiet resolve, but beneath it all was a simmering question: how far would this escalate before it exploded? And what would it mean for us, for the neighborhood, when the truth about who my wife really is came crashing into their lives? There was no turning back now. Every moment felt like a countdown to something bigger, something that would change everything we thought we knew about our peaceful suburban life. Since the tension with Karen began, every day felt like walking a tightrope. The neighborhood that once felt like home now seemed like a stage for a silent battle with allies and adversaries hidden behind every door. What complicated things most wasn't just Karen's obsession with enforcing HOA rules, but the unexpected ways it forced us to confront difficult questions about trust, power, and how far someone should go to protect what's theirs. My wife's role as FBI director meant she carried a huge responsibility, not just for the nation, but for the people closest to her. Yet, despite all the authority and respect that came with her position, she wasn't immune to frustration or doubt. I saw it in the way she clenched her jaw during those quiet moments after Karen's latest provocation. It was a reminder that even the strongest people have limits. Meanwhile, Karen's behavior grew bolder. She wasn't just patrolling anymore, she started organizing other neighbors, pushing for stricter parking enforcement policies that would target us specifically. At community meetings, she played the victim, painting herself as the defender of neighborhood order while twisting facts to make us look like the troublemakers. Her charm fooled some, but others saw through the act and began to question her motives. Was it really about parking, or was there something deeper? Jealousy? Control? Or maybe something even more personal? This sparked a divide in the neighborhood. Some sided with Karen, hoping for stricter rules and more peace, while others quietly supported us, sensing that something felt off. The tension wasn't just about a parking space anymore, it was about power dynamics and hidden agendas. Neighbors I thought were friends began avoiding eye contact, afraid to get caught in the crossfire. On top of all this, there was an unexpected complication. My wife's work started to bleed into our personal lives. Classified threats from her FBI cases showed signs of following her home. Late-night calls, unmarked cars parked near our street, and an uneasy feeling that someone was watching. It made the whole situation with Karen feel even more dangerous. Was her aggressive behavior truly innocent HOA drama? Or was it somehow connected to the bigger, darker forces my wife had battled for years? The moral dilemma crept in slowly. Could we reveal who my wife really was to the neighbors and expose Karen's harassment for what it was? Or would that only bring more risk, more scrutiny? Keeping her identity secret protected us, but also limited what we could do. Staying silent felt like giving Karen and her allies power over our lives, but speaking out risked pulling everyone into a storm they weren't ready for. As the days passed, it became clear that neither side wanted to back down. Karen was playing a dangerous game, and so were we, trying to protect our privacy while facing threats we never expected. The quiet streets held secrets, and beneath the calm surface, a storm was building, ready to break open at any moment. One thing was certain: the real battle wasn't over a parking spot. It was a test of how far people would go to protect their own and what happens when those secrets finally come to light. The air was thick with tension that evening as the neighborhood gathered for another HOA meeting, this time with more at stake than anyone wanted to admit. The room buzzed with whispered conversations, eyes darting nervously between Karen and my wife, who sat quietly beside me. Karen's usual confident smile was tighter, her gaze sharper, as if sensing the ground beneath her was starting to crumble. The energy was electric, charged with anticipation and a silent warning that everything was about to explode. Karen opened the meeting with her usual complaints about rule-breaking and disorder, but this time her words had a sharper edge. She was no longer just a neighborhood busybody, she was a force pushing harder, fueled by something personal. And beneath her calm, I saw cracks: anger, desperation, fear. What was driving her? What had pushed her to this point? My wife's silence was deliberate. She knew the power of restraint, the danger in revealing too much too soon. But I could see the tension in her hands, the way her eyes burned with quiet fury. This wasn't just about parking anymore. It was about protecting everything we had built, the secret life that Karen threatened to unravel with every accusation. The room shifted as Karen laid out her plan to escalate enforcement, hinting at legal action, threats that carried weight beyond HOA bylaws. The crowd was split, some nodding in agreement, others clearly uneasy. Suddenly, a neighbor interrupted. A subtle but pointed question about who really had authority to enforce these rules. The question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Karen's expression flickered for a brief second, an almost imperceptible sign of panic. Was she afraid of something? Was she hiding more than just neighborhood grievances? My wife leaned forward slightly, her presence commanding but calm, sending a silent message, "This ends now." Outside the meeting hall, unmarked cars lingered just beyond the streetlights, shadows blending into the night. The sense of being watched wasn't paranoia, it was real. Someone was tracking us, waiting for the right moment to strike. And Karen's relentless push was no coincidence. It felt like a countdown ticking closer to a breaking point. As the meeting adjourned, the silence between us was deafening. Words hung unsaid, promises unmade. The neighborhood was on the edge, balanced precariously between normalcy and chaos. Every glance, every whisper carried weight. Would Karen finally cross the line? Would my wife's secret become public? And what would the fallout be if it did? In that moment, everything felt suspended in time, the calm before the storm. The questions swirled with no answers yet in sight. One thing was clear. The next move could change everything. Just when it seemed the tension couldn't get any higher, everything shifted in an instant. As the meeting was breaking up, Karen suddenly dropped a bombshell that no one saw coming. She pulled out a stack of documents, official-looking papers that supposedly proved our family had been violating multiple HOA rules for years. The room fell silent. Eyes widened. Whispers erupted. But there was a catch nobody realized yet. Those documents weren't just HOA violations. Hidden in the fine print was something far more dangerous. Evidence of a covert investigation targeting my wife. Somehow, Karen had gotten her hands on classified intel, information that should have been protected at the highest level. How? Why? The questions slammed into us like a tidal wave. It wasn't just personal vendetta anymore. Karen was playing a game far bigger than neighborhood squabbles. Across town, I watched my wife's reaction, her composed mask cracking for a fraction of a second. She quickly scanned the papers, recognizing them as forged but with details so convincing they could fool even seasoned agents. This wasn't random. It was a direct attack. Someone was trying to drag her out of the shadows, to expose her identity and jeopardize everything she'd fought for. And Karen was their unwitting or maybe willing pawn. At the same moment, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from an unknown number. "Trust no one. It's closer than you think." A cold shiver ran down my spine. The quiet neighborhood had become a battlefield, and the enemy was hidden in plain sight. In that instant, betrayal cut deep. A trusted neighbor, someone we'd invited into our lives, was feeding information to Karen, maybe even to forces beyond her. The line between friend and foe blurred dangerously. Every smile now felt suspect, every conversation a potential trap. We were isolated, hunted by whispers and shadows. The emotional stakes soared. This wasn't just about protecting a parking spot or even the neighborhood's peace. It was about protecting identity, safety, and trust, the fragile threads holding our lives together. My wife, with all her strength and resolve, faced a choice: stay hidden and keep fighting from the shadows, or step into the light and confront the storm head-on. As Karen gloated, unaware of the bigger forces at play, I realized we had crossed a point of no return. The secrets we'd guarded so fiercely were unraveling fast. And the next moves would decide everything: who survived, who betrayed, and who would rise from the chaos. The room held its breath as my wife stood, her voice steady but commanding. "Those documents are forged, and whoever planted them is playing a dangerous game, one that could cost lives." Every I turned to her, the silence thick with shock and disbelief. Karen's confident facade faltered for the first time, her face paling. The power balance had shifted, and the neighborhood that once watched quietly was now witness to something far bigger. Then came the unexpected move. My wife revealed a piece of evidence no one anticipated. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood that showed Karen meeting secretly with an unknown man. The crowd gasped. The betrayal wasn't just in words or forged papers. It was in cold, calculated actions designed to destroy us. Karen had crossed a line she could never come back from. But the biggest twist wasn't Karen's fall. It was what came next. The man from the footage was revealed to be an undercover agent working with my wife, part of a covert operation to root out corruption infiltrating local authorities. Karen's campaign had been manipulated by outside forces, a ploy to flush out hidden threats. The HOA drama was a smokescreen for something much deeper. The emotional weight hit hard. My wife had been walking a razor's edge, balancing her secret life and our quiet existence, all while protecting us from enemies we never saw coming. The neighborhood, shaken but enlightened, began to understand the true stakes of what had unfolded. Karen was arrested not just for HOA violations but for collusion and deception tied to the wider investigation. As the dust settled, my wife and I stood together in our driveway, the same spot where it all began. But the air felt different, lighter, charged with new strength. She looked at me and smiled, tired but victorious. Sometimes, she said quietly, the biggest battles happen right where you least expect them. Just when we thought it was over, a final message arrived, a coded warning hinting that the shadowy threats were far from gone. The battle for truth and justice wasn't finished. But now we were ready. The quiet finally returned to our neighborhood, but things had changed forever. Karen's arrest left a ripple through the community. A reminder that appearances can be deceiving. And that sometimes, the real battles are fought far beyond the surface. The neighbors who had doubted us began to see the truth behind the story. What looked like petty HOA drama was actually a test of courage, trust, and resilience. For my wife, the ordeal was a bittersweet victory. She'd protected her identity and our home, but the cost was heavy. The burden of her secret life remained, a constant shadow that shaped every choice she made. Yet, through it all, her strength shone brightest in the quiet moments. A shared smile, a reassuring hand on my shoulder, the calm after the storm. Our bond had grown deeper, forged in the fires of uncertainty and fear. Looking back, it was clear how much this experience had changed us, not just as a family but as individuals. Karen's obsession revealed the dangers of unchecked power and the pain caused by fear disguised as control. It reminded us that everyone has a story, often hidden beneath layers of assumptions and judgment, and it showed how important it is to stand up for what's right even when the stakes are high. As the neighborhood began to heal, conversations opened up about trust, privacy, and the unseen struggles many carry. We found new allies among old neighbors, united by a shared understanding that community is more than rules and regulations. It's about respect and empathy. We learned that sometimes true strength lies in vulnerability and true courage in simply being yourself. The final lesson settled deep within me. Life's toughest challenges often come disguised as ordinary moments, a parking dispute, a whispered accusation, a quiet street. But they carry the power to reveal who we really are. And in that revelation lies hope. So, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's this: never underestimate the battles hidden behind everyday struggles. Stand firm in your truth, protect your peace, and don't be afraid to confront the shadows. Because sometimes the most unexpected conflicts teach us the greatest lessons. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Let this story remind us all to face our fears with strength and heart, and to protect the ones we love, no matter what.